I said, I don't care nothing about y'all little show.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sci under the Believe Podcast Network. It is indeed a podcast about Black science fiction and fantasy and staying on the same page as a family. Today is episode 108, and we'll be discussing Black Mermaids, Groupies, Meg the Stallion, sickness and health, and the practice of freedom. First things first, we would like to thank patrons, aka the Country Club. You know who you are, for supporting us every single month with $1, $2, $5. Any little bit supports the I was about to say any little bitch supports the Wallen family. Any little bitch out there.
Any little bitch. We accept
any little bit
all bitches,
supports,
especially the little bitches.
Okay,
we love the little bitches.
Close my child's ears. We are here as a whole family today. Wild is strapped to my chest.
Little bitches.
No, don't see. Now you're gonna have to edit and cut. Not my baby. Anyway, we thank y'all so much for all of your contributions and just always believing in us as a family. For those of you who watch the YouTube video when it comes out, whenever Ben decides to do it, you can see I am actively fighting with Wild. She is moving the microphone because she says, I don't care nothing about y'all little show. Anyway, if you would like to continue supporting with Wild and Family, you can find the link to the Patreon in the episode notes. Also, reminder, I'm doing a Sunday 30-minute yoga class for beginners. It's at 9 a.m. PT, noon ET. So thank you so much to everybody that's been joining me on that class. And people have said they have really liked that. Anyway, let's do a quick check-in because we skipped last week. Thank y'all so much for being patient with us. The whole house was down sick. Me and Wild Lynn had colds and flus, and then Ben had stomach flu.
Well, no, I had the man flu.
Oh.
You said I had the man flu.
Ben had what we in the biz like to call the man flu. What's the man flu, Ben? Break it down for the people.
So basically, studies on mice have shown that bacterial infections affect male and female mice differently, and therefore we can assume that, flu symptoms and sickness affect human males and human females differently because testosterone slightly suppresses the immune system, where estrogen sort of boosts the immune system. So the man flu might actually be a real thing.
The man flu is a real thing, but I don't think it's a matter of DNA. I think men have been...
It's not a matter of DNA. It's a matter of testosterone and estrogen.
Or whatever all of that chemical is. I just think men have been conditioned to be like pampered and babied. And because you told me growing up, how did your mom react whenever you got sick? Why don't you paint the people a picture?
Well, first of all, when I was sick recently, Amber brought me canned chicken soup. And I was like, is this homemade? Because...
First of all, not even first, half of a point of all.
So
I am a working woman, so I don't have time to take care of a sick baby. I'm sick and been up here talking about, is it homemade?
I got my kombucha to boost my
It's kombucha, Ben. It is kombucha. It's a K-O-M.
I like saying kombucha.
Okay, you got your kombucha. Yeah, I had the audacity to ask me, was the soup homemade? Like I'm supposed to be Chef Boyardee, Julia Childs, Brady Crocker out this. Absolutely not. I am a working woman.
And speaking of being a working woman, you have been hosting. You hosted a little baby concert. And
pre-show.
The pre-show. And a Megan the Stallion pre-show concert.
I did.
And the last show, it was cold as a witch's tit. Did I use that Southern phrase correctly?
Yes. Last show, it was cold as a witch's titty.
Right.
It was a little chilly out here for LA. But yes, the last time we spoke to y'all, I think, I was gearing up for the first concert of the series. And so for that concert, Lil Baby was featured, and then Meg the Stallion was featured this past week. And I did not, unfortunately, get a chance to speak to Lil Baby or Meg the Stallion, but I did get a chance to every single week on the show, we've been able to interview 2 Chainz, who oddly enough is really funny. Not him is a comedian, not he's a comedian, but he's kind of a little bit of he's a cool cat. So he's not really going to give you much in an interview. So you will ask him like a very big question and he'll be like, no. So you're like,
no.
Damn it, 2 Chainz. Now this is a show. Now give the people something. But I mean, he's just like, I'm an OG. I'm 2 Chainz. I don't really have to explain my answer, explain my whatever. But can I explain the question that I asked him real quick?
Yeah.
So on the show, I'm nervous, right? 2 Chainz, he's always wearing shades, and it's inside. Again, I'm not shading 2 Chainz. I've been a huge fan of his, but he's just like not an easy guy to talk to.
You told me that he got you through some dark times in college.
He did.
Something.
He got us all. I mean, like every pregame had a 2 Chainz song in it from like. Well, It's a Vibe came out later, but like the birthday, it's your birth, like all of the 2 Chainz, I am smoking on that me. He is that guy. But so one question I asked him is because 2 Chainz is from Atlanta, as is Lil Baby. And so Lil Baby's sort of in that new generation of Atlanta sound in the rap game. And 2 Chainz, like no shade, is from about 10 years ago. I wouldn't call him old, and so I basically asked him a question like, hey, do you, as an Atlanta native, do you think Lil Baby stands on the shoulders of you and some of the other rappers in the game? Do you see yourself as a mentor for him in some ways? I didn't ask that question like, do you call him every week? I simply asked like, do you see yourself as, the class that came before Lil Baby? And he was like, no. So I was like,
awesome.
And I tried to like tweak
Lil
the question
Baby.
A little bit, but he was like, no, he's got his own sound. He's got his own thing going.
Then you move on to the next question. I mean,
I know that, but okay, so say what you got to say.
Well, a good host would learn how to do that, But you're a new host, so no shade against you.
Right, I am a new host, but also there's a level of like you could easily, if I would say, if anybody ever asked me, do you think you stand on the shoulders of like Quinta Brunson and Issa Rae as I continue to climb and continue on the trajectory that I'm on? There's no way I could say no. Like that's who set the tone for like Evelyn of the Internet's like internet comedy, regular black girl comedy. Like I stand on their shoulders. You know what I'm saying? So for him to just be like, no, I was like, dang, 2 Chainz. And then I got curved on my hug because of the table was in the way. The table on set.
I'll never hear the end of this hug.
But we got it right this week. I got to hug 2 Chainz this week.
That was good.
Yeah, I'll post a video to prove that to y'all. But anyway, yeah, Ben had the flu.
Yeah, and we saw Meg Thee Stallion, though, after. I got over my sickness pretty quickly.
My mom did teach me, though, that you get 3 days to be sick. Mama said, Amber, men are absolute babies when it comes to being sick. So it's customary just to give your man 3 good days to be down bad. I'm like, Ma, Ben shit in the tub. Like, I'm supposed to deal with that for 3 days? 3 days.
I didn't shit in the tub for 3 days. I don't have that much shit in me.
I'm saying, but when you're sick, you don't clean up after yourself.
I told you, give me a day. I needed a day. And I was fine. But
anyway, I love you though. For in sickness and in health, that's what they said.
That is what
you gotta
marriage
admit,
is.
You just
friendship.
You be putting on a little bit, just a little bit.
I mean, I threw up like 10 times. I don't.
But sometimes you'll be like, oh.
Yeah, because my stomach hurts.
Soup homemade. Oh.
Yeah, that was
I
actually said that to be funny. I said that to be funny.
But I'm glad you're feeling better, Ben.
Yes, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. I had to feel better. I mean,
See,
I couldn't do anything.
I can't even be nice to you.
I can't even be sick.
You only like when I'm mean to you.
I know.
Ben, I am so glad that you, the father of my child, and my bestie are feeling better. I really am.
Talking about people being mean to each other at the Megan Thee Stallion concert, she mentioned something about, people hating on her. And I was thinking about Drake recently because if y'all don't know,
we're gonna give this 2 minutes tops because I could go on.
Yeah, we shouldn't spend too much time on this. I'm just very confused why Drake would rap about Megan lying about being shot by Tory Lanez. I'm very, very confused about this, and that whole thing comes out of the internet conspiracy theory realm. And here's a man, Drake, who talks about his haters being annoying or whatever, and comes out and is himself a hater. And I'm like, just fuck off, bro. Like, stick to rapping about parties and Hotline Bling. Like, why do you have to make this statement that has nothing to do with you? I mean, I guess it does have something. Yeah, he tries
to play it off like, oh, well, it was really about ass shots. It's like, no, it wasn't. Like, you could have chose any other girl in the game who actually has a BBL if it was about ass shots, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So stop. Just leave leave Megan alone. Like,
or
she's
just
the new Britney Spears of this generation, it feels like at this point.
It's also sort of funny because now it's just a terrible business move because Drake sort of presents himself as being this like businessman kind of person. And it's a terrible business move because now he's cut off ties of ever working with her. And she is like the rap game. Like she is a image of the rap game right now.
And we saw her as people. Well, we were already fans of Meg's. I'm fans of Meg's beyond the music. I'm a fan of when she is on She-Hulk and not Pose, Legendary. I love her as a judge on Legendary. I love her as Tina Snow on this season of P-Valley. Like, just all around great person, all around like promoting that she is graduating from college, and we all celebrated that with her. All around promoting that she's a
Drake
fan of.
Said was fake.
She's a fan of anime, so it's just it's really corny and goofy for him to go after her. And then did you see recently that he also called Alexis Ohanian, Serena Williams' husband? He called him a groupie.
Man,
it's just like what kind
what
a
are
man
wrong
who
with these celebrities who are just let me intentionally cut off like parts of my business appendages. like why?
Then you're gonna be called a groupie at some point.
I don't care
for being a loving father and a loving husband.
Okay,
I guess that would make one a groupie. When Drake is literally the biggest groupie out here for athletes,
but it doesn't.
And Alexis Ohanian's like, I actually married the greatest athlete in the freaking world.
But it doesn't matter.
I'm a groupie.
Why is this even an issue? Like, who cares? I don't care.
Correct.
Drake loves basketball.
Yeah.
He should give Kobe a hug. He should hang out with LeBron James.
So
Drake's
corny.
music is a pump up kind of music. That's fine. Like, why are we, and there's this whole thing of like celebrities getting annoyed at people getting all in their business. But celebrities are all in each other's business.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, shut the fuck up, sit down, and rap for college kids to get drunk at parties. Okay?
Yeah. Stay on the hotline. Stay on the hotline, bling.
The other thing, Amber, you didn't know that Drake was Jewish, which is like the thing that every single white person knows about Drake. Yeah, Drake is Jewish, and he's very proud of his Jewish heritage. So I think it was also sort of surprising to hear Drake step into these conspiracy theories when they're so like he should know better about conspiracy theories, right? He should know better as both being a black man and a Jewish man, having those intersecting identities.
If there's anybody you should have beef with this week, it's Kanye.
Yeah,
it's not me.
Yay.
Oh, yay. Apologies. Anyway, that's all right. See, this is why this isn't a celebrity podcast, because we could go on all day. Anyway, I promise y'all we are going to talk about 10 Cent Daisy, which is what the movie we watched on Prime Video. But before we get into that, this is your reminder. If you would like to continue supporting the Sci-Fi Side podcast, maybe not with your dollars, but with your words, which go a long way as well, you could drop a podcast review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we have can you zoom that in for me, baby? We have a great review here.
I'll read it.
Oh,
yeah,
I
got you.
Get me.
We have a review.
That's my groupie.
Listenable, even if not a sci-fi girl. That's spelled GWORL.
Santana, go off.
This person, KG Love, writes, "Love listening. I'm not a huge reader or into sci-fi things, but I'm still very entertained. This has encouraged me to check out a few movies and shows, mostly here for the banter and 2 point of views shared by Amber and Ben. Love it."
That's a that is like
that is
ultimate thing that we want.
Yes.
That is every review we want. People who are like, I care about the sci-fi here and there, but I mostly come for y'all. So we're very excited to hear that. Thank you so much, KG Love.
So we watched 10 Cent Daisy. It is a low budget film. So I think for those who are going to watch this, just go into knowing that it was picked up by Gravitas Veritas to be distributed on video on demand. And I'm very glad this movie exists. And there are definitely problems with it. They weren't able to. There's a lot of info dumping. We've talked about info dump before on the show, and essentially,
explain that.
Info dumping is when you tell a backstory without showing it. And because I truly believe because of budget constraints, they were not able to show everything they wanted to show to the story.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah.
I know we're not going to just like go on and on about the negatives because we do have some really great things to talk about, the elements of this movie, because it is about Black mermaids. But one thing also about info dumping, for this movie specifically, it got to some points where the who was info dumping was also a little bit lost on us. Like, have you ever just like walked into a classroom and a professor starts talking blah 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 and you're like, I don't even know what class this is. Is it organic chemistry? Is it economics 101? So it was really hard to even sort of pay attention during the info dumps because I was like, but wait, who is this character that's talking? So Ben did a much better job than me of like listening to the info dumps, because I do not do well at learning something when I don't even know what I'm learning. And that was quite a few of the scenes. I was like, Ben, I can't even listen to this character because who are they? So I'm just keeping it real, y'all.
They introduce some characters pretty quickly and expect us to know who the character is. And you have to watch sort of the film to the complete end to understand the importance of one of the characters, Mira, who is sort of the pseudo villain. But before we get into that, 10 Cent Daisy is about a mermaid, a spoiler alert, who is abandoned by her mother and is raised in a town by caring foster mother, Iris, and her two sisters. And her two sisters, the mermaid is called Daisy, and her sisters are called, I believe, Lily and another flower name.
Orchid, Violet.
Yes. And
Lily's the little girl.
Lily's the little girl, but so Orchid and Violet are the two sisters, and they find this little girl named Daisy, who is the mermaid. However, in this town, after the town's priest attempts to kill Daisy, her sisters flee, and the film starts with them attempting to return their home in the West Indies after their mother is released from prison for killing the priest. So Iris is the mother, saves her mermaid adopted child from being killed by this priest, and the girls flee to Berkeley, California. So, okay, I just want to start with Black mermaids and the great question of, why does America need Black mermaids?
That's a great question. Is this a question that you're asking me, or this is a question that has been answered by the genre?
I don't think it's answered. I think the great essential questions don't have single word answers. They don't have single sentence answers. But
got it.
In my mind, like, why does America need Black mermaids?
I personally believe there is a poetic justice to Black mermaids, given Black people's history with water and large
with the Atlantic
ocean, with the transatlantic slave trade and things of that nature. So there's a little bit when it comes to fantasy that feels healing in a way when you write about a Black mermaid, because we've read so many texts of Black people just being thrown into the sea, like lifeless bodies there.
Interesting.
And so
the mermaid story becomes this fantastical way of like reclaiming the water and loving the water.
Yes.
You know, that also makes me think that perhaps that the racist stereotype that Black people can't swim comes from this idea that slaves were being, chained together and then thrown off.
Right.
Right.
It's like nobody can swim with chains on, and if they're dead. Yeah.
I also think that racist stereotype comes again from another important historical happening in Chicago in 1919, in a beach not far from where Amber and I lived. A young Black boy swam over to the white side, and these white men threw rocks at this young boy. I forgot his name. The rocks hit him. He falls underwater. He dies. And this caused massive riots in 1919.
Wow, I did not know about that. We should drop some more info.
Yeah,
about
so
that
I'll share. There's a great book that Eve L. Ewing wrote called 1919, and we've also read Eve L. Ewing's. She wrote a collection of poems. But yeah, so that's actually I wasn't thinking of that. The other thing I wanted to talk about. Why does America needs them? See. This is a great question because of multiple answers. Is America needs Black mermaids because of the pushback resulting in the remake of the live action film The Little Mermaid?
Correct. Yes.
Right? Because that pushback again tells us, just more evidence that the cultural war of like creating space for non-white stories or just non-white characters.
Yes, we can't even get to the story because y'all tripping about the elf.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, like that in itself again shows us that there is this battle that has to occur within the realm of fantasy, within the realm of storytelling.
Absolutely.
So there's a great, Michel Foucault, the great philosopher, he writes about this difference between the practice of freedom versus liberation, where liberation is a political movement, right? So
the practice of freedom, individual practices versus liberation, just like a way of life.
Liberation is let me explain it.
Okay.
So liberation is a political action, right? So the Emancipation Proclamation, it was an act of liberation.
So like more legislative.
Yeah, legislative, it's political. Where the practice of freedom is this ongoing struggle to combat the lingering effects of the oppressor.
I got you. Okay.
So the practice of freedom for Black artists, in this case, the director of this film, who is a Black man, he is a director, and him writing a story about a Black mermaid becomes almost like a practice of freedom. Of saying like, hey, mermaids, even though the greatest American image of a mermaid has been, Ariel from the Disney movie, but when you put a Black mermaid, now you are practicing freedom. So just the image, there's this great image where you see a mermaid in this water and you see her like with her tail flowing. That image for someone, for a kid, for a new filmmaker, that image becomes a practice of freedom.
Yeah.
Isn't that like sort of beautiful? Like
it is beautiful. It does make me think that does the nature of being Black make everything a practice of freedom?
Yeah, I think you're very act, but in this case, creating of art specifically.
Got you. Yeah,
so
for sure.
There's a book I'm reading.
It just makes me. Because of our position, as Black people or Black woman, our positionality in society now. Like I went to a yoga class earlier today. Even though I went for my mental health, there's always this is me practicing freedom because Black bodies have been so controlled. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not a problem. Is every action that I take always going to be like a radical practice of freedom, or are any of those movements and actions ever going to be just like, I just drew a cartoon?
No. Yes, which we get into. So in Woke, this artist is a Black comic artist, and he's creating this Black. He's not creating Black art, but as a Black comic book artist, he's making art with like fruit and stuff.
Right.
But the very fact that he is a Black person doing this becomes a practice of freedom.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, my stuff is not political, but it's inherently political.
Correct.
Because by doing this, you are combating like what the oppressor has like left over. And so in this case, like, Amber and I have talked about this before, where Amber will make a funny video or will write like a funny sketch, or she'll do something funny, and it's not political in nature, but the very fact that she is doing it becomes a practice of freedom and becomes a form of politics.
Like I'll just share, oh, look, we're at swim lessons with Wild. And then I'll see look at Wild breaking stereotypes.
Yes.
It's like, oh, there is this stereotype that Black people can't swim. Wild is biracial. So now this has gone from a swim lesson to like a 6-month-old breaking stereotypes, which just inherently is just how it goes.
She's practicing that freedom. Yeah, just
right.
Like that. But I think when you have a public platform, and there's a great book called The Content of Our Caricature, which talks about Black comic artists. And Rebecca Wazo, who is the Black woman who wrote the book, she's a brilliant scholar, but she writes about this practice of freedom. That's where I got this idea within the context of like Black artists.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk
like
about was mermaid culture, right?
Yes.
So there are two things that this film introduced that about mermaid culture that I thought was fantastic world building. And I think if the filmmaker had more time, they should have delved more into this. Okay. One, that these mermaids can only swim in the water of the West Indies. So this,
I love that.
This one mermaid, Mira, who's sort of the pseudo villain in some ways, she imports water into a pool so that she can transform. So you can't transform unless you're in a specific kind of water.
Correct.
What do you think about that?
Like, I think that makes the most sense.
Do you need a why did you create a why in your head?
That little detail was really helpful because in your brain you're kind of like, well, wouldn't she just become a mermaid every morning in the
every
shower?
Time in the shower.
If it rains, she becomes a mermaid. Yeah. If she had a glass of water, it becomes a mermaid. So I think that detail was something I was like, oh yeah, like that would make sense. It's like these are the waters where she was born. And there is a level of we all become our truest selves once we're home in a way. So I thought it was like a really nice balance of like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like you get Amber, 95% of the time, but you get like a really big picture of who I am whenever I'm home with my family, and the same with you.
When you're with your family.
Or maybe, I don't know. Do you feel that way? And I love my in-laws. Like this is not that, but just Ben has a lot of thoughts.
I don't have home. I don't feel a connection with home probably in the same way that you do because of when I moved and the frequency in which I moved and the fact that I was homeschooled. So home feels a little bit more fluid with me. Probably the place I feel the most home at would be like probably a school setting. Like I love school and I love education and I love the classroom. So being inside, like as a student in a professor kind of environment where there's a professor and you're sitting around and you're having book discussions, that's probably when I feel the most me. So doing a podcast like this and having an in-depth discussion and talking about Michel Foucault and wrapping that into stories with mermaids, that for me is that's where I feel the most me.
Which is real. And I do want to acknowledge that home can be relative to the person, right? We have chosen family. We have people who have been misplaced from family to family. And now it's like, no, my friend and my nest here is where I feel the most at home. Or hiking this mountain is where I feel the most at home. But I just know like a little piece of that for me is just always going back home to Georgia.
Good old Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia, Bury Me in Georgia, which is a Kane Brown song.
It is.
On his newest album, and you're actually co-hosting a...
Yep, got Kane Brown coming up this Thursday.
Yeah, so y'all should watch that. Anyway, all right, so the next piece of world building,
okay,
back to mermaids, is...
I love mermaids. Next tap, maybe.
The mermaid, in this case... What mermaids do culturally in mermaid culture is that you find a foster mother and drop that child off. And so, for example, Daisy does that with her child.
Yeah.
And Mira, who is her mom, does that with her. And I thought that was a fascinating choice because you're like, okay, on one level, you're like, okay, this is a mermaid doing it. But when it's a black mermaid doing it, there's a subtext of a black woman abandoning her child for the sake of herself, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, I don't know if have you ever read The Awakening by Kate Chopin?
I have. A long time ago.
So
high school. So
half
read it because it was assigned.
But that book has a place within feminist literature of a woman rebelling against the caretaker, right? Yes. And so black women generally have been seen in American society as like the matriarch of the home, and they have been responsible for, being the breadwinners and all of that. And so when you have a story about a mermaid, but also a black mermaid, there becomes this like almost a more feminist reading of this story, because the mermaid can now just, instead of focusing on the raising of her child, she can be a mermaid and do her own thing.
I think Toni Morrison would really appreciate that.
Wait, why do you say that?
I don't know. Obviously I'm obsessed with Toni Morrison, but I'll back up. We in America hate a mother abandoning their child. We hate, I mean, everybody should, but like there is no almost no seeing a person once they have a baby. So a public enemy number one is a mother who decides to abort for her health, for her situation or anything like that. And so when I think about like Beloved, where, spoiler if you haven't read it, where a mother makes a decision to kill her child, or like a Sophie's Choice or something, these women have been vilified, and you don't look at this person as like, why does this person have to make this difficult choice, and what are all of the factors? I'm not saying like in every situation. I'm not talking about like, the mothers who like drown all their kids in the bathtub and the next day or whatever. But I'm talking about like in literature and in history in some specific cases.
Wait,
so
what mothers are drowning all their kids in the bathtub?
You remember that like Andrea Yates or something?
Oh, didn't she like not get in
or like
prison
Casey
for that?
Anthony? Yeah, there's some, true crime like
Drop in the comments what mother you know who's drowned all her children.
It's a thing that happens, Ben. But
no,
like,
I'm actually curious. It's so rare though that when
Right.
it does happen, it becomes a big thing. But when I know American
but when a dad
crime,
walks away, it's just like, I mean, that's the dad though. But a mother leaving her
a
child,
mother
like,
leaving her
people
child.
sit up in their seats, and
Wait.
so I think a tale of a mother saying like, I need to go and embrace my
And
full
be-
mermaid
and-
self. Could you foster my child? You, another woman, could you care for my
Yeah.
child? I really like that because it also speaks to like the very Black nature of a village raising your child anyway
okay.
as well. But I know that there are people that are just like, a mother leaving her child is the greatest sin one can ever commit. If you live life and if you live enough years and you meet enough people, you start to learn like, this person did not feel that they were the best person to raise this child, and so they left this child with this nest of people to protect and love this child, and that's the best parent they could be in that moment. So I'm not co-signing like a true crime situation, but I'm just saying. Am I making any sense, or am I rambling?
No, it both. So your ramble makes sense.
Okay.
What situation would require you to leave wild? I think like if there was a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to
And-
be like, what would require me to leave? It would have to be like, we need you on Mars for this very like, and you coming will literally launch
there's an
us
alien
into another
invasion.
galaxy.
And
Yes.
they say we
It need to be like some interstellar like
we need some sort of comedian to make the aliens
laugh.
and so that they won't destroy
And
the
I would
entire
still
world.
require
So you
a
would
once
drop,
a week chat or something.
You would drop
remember,
wild off.
Think about if Interstellar was a mom instead of a dad.
Like
Would that movie have done as well? Would there be outrage? Like,
I haven't seen that movie in a while, but from what I understand, Matthew McConaughey leaves his children.
Correct.
To find like a space station or something, or
to
prevent,
legit save the world.
Yes, and yeah, if it was a woman, yeah, I think the woman couldn't be portrayed. Matthew McConaughey in that film, as I remember, is portrayed as a very caring, loving father.
Right.
And I think if you were to have a woman to do that, I don't think she would be portrayed as a caring, loving mother. She
Correct.
would be probably portrayed as more distant.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn. It's fascinating.
I mean, I'm sure we could, if we thought hard enough, we could think of some movie where the mother abandoned the child and the child like later had to understand why and the sacrifice that was made. But like, for the most part, what movie is that? You got anything?
Yeah. I don't know.
Where there's quite a few like, dad goes off to war and comes
I think
back.
The Awakening was one of the books
Yes.
where you're given the context of why this woman, for those who have not read the book, it's been around for like 100 years, but she kills herself at the end because she feels trapped.
You know
And
how else I remember that?
Yeah.
Because I effed around and didn't read the end. And the next day in class in 10th grade in the discussion, Ragsdale was like, Amber, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the end of the book?
For those who don't know, Ragsdale is
My 10th grade AP Lit teacher.
But who
huge influence on my life.
Yeah, huge influence. We actually went and got pizza with him. We'll see him when we go back home. Speaking of home is still important. And he taught you a lot about writing and stuff.
Yes. So imagine me in class nodding awake.
So this was a teacher you respected, you
for
loved,
sure,
and he called you out.
Yeah, and he's like, Amber, what'd you think at the end of the book? In front of the group circle, and I was like, it was so joyful, and I love a happy ending, and I really appreciate how things came together in the end. He was like, huh. And he's like, so you don't have anything to say about the ocean and the water? And it's like, yeah, that was just a real cleansing in the end of
which is not terrible.
It wasn't. I was speaking just broad enough to do well. But he was like, and how do you feel about that? He was like, and why don't you connect text to world? And I probably said something like I too would really enjoy just
committing suicide in the ocean.
Yeah. After class, he was like, so you want to commit suicide? That's what you said today in class. I was like, what? He's like, you didn't read the end of the book, did you? I was like, I didn't. What happened to old girl in the book? And he was like, God damn it, Amber. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, read the end of The Awakening.
That's also a good teacher where you point out that kind of thing at the end of class, not in the middle, so you don't embarrass the student. So
absolutely.
Okay, so size, things that we weren't crazy about or enjoyed. There were some characters in here that were superfluous. You didn't need them. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the sisters. Some of the cutting seemed weird. There were certain scenes where I was like, how do we get from... I didn't know how... I think at one point, is it Violet? I think Violet goes from dropping Daisy off to clean, and then she goes back to her, essentially her, mentor, but her demeanor has completely changed.
Yeah.
I don't... It was a little bit disconnected, and I think those... Yeah, anyway. There's some weird editing things.
At one point I told Ben, I was like, I feel like this would have read better as a book just because I would have been able to flip back to the beginning and see the family tree or something. I just needed a couple more things that grounded me in who everybody was to each other. So some parts of it literally felt like, I don't know, if you walked into a coffee shop and heard two people talking about something super important and you're like, but I don't know who these people are and I really kind of don't even know what they're talking about.
Would have been helpful.
And I fully understand sometimes you give the audience way too much and we're like, we get it, you're the villain, but this needed a little bit more of wait, who's talking again? Wait, where's this going? Or this scene is a little bit too long. I would have appreciated more of this over here. And also for me, I just needed a little bit more creature feature. Oh. Ben has taught me this phrase and
creature features.
We kind of saw one mermaid at the very end. So even if you do have a small budget, I think there are some ways to bring home the point that somebody is a mermaid. Maybe they can have some gill prints in their neck or something, or maybe they the water of all kinds lights up a little bit when they touch it, or a music starts right when the hand touches the water. Just a little bit more of okay, this person is mythical and magical. This girl had perfectly arched eyebrows and some braids and some coily hair. I was like, is she the mermaid? Which one of the girls are the special girl? It was a little bit hard to understand. How is this girl a mermaid? She's kind of just blending with everybody else. And I mean, she doesn't talk much, but that doesn't tell me what she does do. So I think the main girl who was
might be harder for mermaids to talk underwater, so they developed the skill of not talking as much, maybe. But she was actually raised in the water. She was raised outside the water.
So then that wouldn't have made sense, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. There were just we needed a little bit more story and I don't know, less long shots of beautiful people at some points. The characters were beautiful. Of course, we always will support a Black director, but
I think the story of the West Indies would have been way more interesting. Most of the filming takes place in Berkeley, where the sisters are trying to get home, and then it turns out Mira is trying to recapture Daisy.
And there were some really great plot twists in there, but I think they would have hit harder if we had a more clear understanding of who everybody was. Yeah. I'll just be honest about that.
Yeah, there's an inspector who's been haunted by this case forever who thinks.
But you don't see him as a young inspector being haunted by this case. It's kind of like.
It would have been more interesting to, like, if the film just took place in the West Indies.
There's a level of, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase this, but sometimes when it comes to like your audience and performer and this dynamic, there's a level of trust that needs to be gained in some way. Like yoga can be like that too. Like I go to a yoga class and the teacher does a couple things on the front end that makes me trust, like, okay, I trust now where this plot is going. I trust where this class is going. I trust how this person's ability to move our bodies around and things like that. And so I think there were a few ways that this director could have established more trust with us as the audience on the front end, so that then when something big happens, like, oh, you got us now. We're fully hooked.
Right. So we don't really get the full backstory until maybe 3/4 into the film. And that would have been more powerful if we started on the front end. I think that would have been... that would have been more helpful.
Got to gain
for
our
a
trust
viewer.
first, and then we can do some like cool ethereal.
Well, let's talk about someone who has gained our trust.
Okay, yeah,
Ryan Coogler.
Period, poo.
Fantastic. So what are we watching?
Well, okay.
Next week? What's going on next week?
All right, this has been Warping Up the Show.
It is Warp Up.
Y'all,
Warp Up.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast. Thank you also for being patient with us as we parent, as we move across the country still, as we take care of our bodies. Always appreciate y'all for that. But up next, we will be watching Wakanda Forever, Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler. Please, 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 y'all, go see Wakanda Forever this weekend so that we can all talk about it next Tuesday on the show. And we will see y'all next week for episode 109.
It's actually Black Panther Wakanda Forever, not Wakanda Forever Black Panther.
Well, you typed that. Black Panther. Go watch Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Listen to Riri's Lift Me Up instrumental and the one with words. And we'll see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all. Say bye, Wildland.